Randy, welcome to the show. Thank you once again for taking your time out of your crazy schedule. I just heard you got stuck in Kansas City for a week, right? From your crazy story.
Yep. Kansas in the snow.
Yeah. Goal was to get there, for 1 or 2 days, and you end up, 9 days there?
Yes.
That's wild. Well, I want to drive in straight into some questions because you have so much knowledge in the leadership, entrepreneurship world, and you spent a decade training leaders and entrepreneurs. And one thing you consistently emphasize is fundamentals. In the world chasing speed, tools, shortcuts, why do fundamentals still determine who wins and who doesn't?
Well, so let me make one correction because it's in context here. I've been training leaders for about 3 decades, and I think that's the problem. We're chasing the tool. We're chasing the quick fix. I hate to say it, nobody will say this, chasing the shortcut. And we forget about the fundamentals of people, the empathy. We forget about the fact that sometimes you'll have an outlier, somebody that doesn't fit with all the stats and what AI would tell you. And, I think if we get better, I'll have people and I'll do training on something, a fundamental tool. I call them core skills, whether it's communication or team building or leadership or, just connecting to people. Yeah, I've heard all this. I already know. I've already heard everything. Okay, my question is not have you heard it? It's how well are you doing with it? And not by your own measure, but by the people who you're affecting. So how good would your team members tell me you're doing at that? Because I go everywhere and I hear communication is a problem. Accountability is a problem. There's a disconnect between management and frontline. It's how good are we doing at those? And I don't care how much technology, it's like a CRM. It's only as good as the information you put into it. Well, the information we get from AI is only as good as how we couple it with human empathy and emotional intelligence.
Can we talk about that? Communication, right? Obviously, you work with the companies all sizes, small to a few people to up to probably a couple hundred. Question
Very
is,
large, yeah.
where do you see that disconnect and why between the owner, leader, and the front line?
Well, I think to some degree, and by necessity, the owners, the CEO is, at 50,000 feet having to look far into the future. And the frontline person is looking at, between now and next Friday is long range planning for them. And I think there's times when we forget what it was like to be that person. I think there's probably some amount, not completely, I'm not going to blame everything on this. I think there's some amount of generational disconnect. And I just think that because we don't communicate very much person to person, a lot of emailing, a lot of texting, a lot of messaging in other forms, that we don't get that person's pulse. We don't realize that they're kind of getting burned out or kind of getting overwhelmed or whatever the case may be. And so when we have that, I think it's easier for me to go back to my list and my stack and my pile in my inbox than it is to dig in and go, hey, what's going on? How can I help you? And I just think we say we don't have time. I think we cannot afford to not make the time, but I think that's the excuse we make a lot of times is we don't have time. And then throw in hybrid, throw in virtual. I haven't seen you in 2 months. My son, my oldest kid, and my son-in-law both work 100% remotely. They go into the office. My son-in-law, I don't know that he ever goes in the office. My son goes in once a month. And so I think that's it also, because I don't really see it on your face. I don't see it in your pace as you're walking down the hall that you seem to be slower than usual. And maybe that's because your energy's down because your baby's not sleeping good and you're staying up all night. I mean, there's just a lot of that AI can't tell you.
What leadership skill is most commonly missing outside of communication?
I really spent a lot of time last week talking about that. I think we do a better job of managing tasks than we do of developing people. And I think it's easy to look at it. And here's a word that some people are going to hear this and immediately jump to the wrong connotation. I'm looking at the dictionary connotation, not our cultural connotation when I say this. We're exploiting people. In other words, we're just using what they already know for the good of our organization. I'm not saying exploiting like human trafficking, and it's kind of gotten associated with that, but we're not spending money to train frontline people. We'll spend money to train managers and leaders. We'll spend money to train salespeople, but rarely do we spend money on frontline people.
You see that often. You see that often. You see that often.
All the time. I mean,
Wow.
we want you to come do management. We want you to come do leadership training. And I'm like, how about throwing in some of your customer service reps? How about throwing in some of your, inside people who are customer, account services or whatever. And I think then the theory is our leaders are going to go train our frontline people.
Right.
But our leaders are now also managers who are also taking care of their own stack, their own list, their own inbox. And it's like, when you're super, super, super busy, what are the things that fall off the list first? I'm going to stay up late or get up early, so I'm not going to get enough sleep. I'm not going to go work out. I'm going to run through the quick drive-through line instead of eating healthier. What's the same way? When my list is this long, the thing that falls to the back is developing people. I will get you to get this task done, but did I actually put together, I've got this right in front of me, that it's like 78% of people say that they don't get feedback from their leader. And there's a group called, I'm looking to make sure I give credit where credit's due. HR interviewed 650 HR people. The top 3 things they don't do well. Have
HR
difficult
HR team don't do well.
Well, they interviewed HR professionals, but the HR professionals were talking about leaders in general
Okay.
in their own companies. Top 3 things they don't do well: have difficult conversations, help their employees create a strategy for attaining the employees with an apostrophe S, or you could say S apostrophe, the employees' goals, not the company's goals, but my career goals, my personal goals, or whatever. And then the third thing goes with the first thing: give candid feedback. They don't give positive or negative feedback. Well, if I don't know how I'm measuring up, I don't know if I'm hitting the mark, I don't know if I'm exceeding or falling behind, I'm just going to decide whatever pace I can live with long term. And if you're not giving me any time management skills, you're not giving me any communication skills, you're not giving me any leadership skills or anything like that, how am I supposed to be better next week than I was last week? And certainly, how am I supposed to be ready to take on that next position within our own organization if they've not given me this? So a lot of times I end up having to leave and go somewhere else who maybe doesn't know that I've not demonstrated those skills. I can talk it in the interview, but at the company where I'm at right now, they know that I've not done this well. Am I not doing this because I can't, or not doing this because you haven't given me the opportunity and the experience? And I always talk about I think people have a level of capability. This is what I can currently do. This is what I've been trained for, have experience for, but I think they have a capacity to learn new things. This is my intelligence level. This is what I could be capable of. My job as a leader is to help them close that gap. My job as a leader is to help them tap into that potential that's there that they haven't elevated to yet.
Or, or,
And
or
I think that's what we're doing worse than anything, is not developing people.
or leaders just don't know how.
Well, and I hear that. It's always interesting to me because that kind of came naturally to me. So I think I took it for granted.
Yeah.
But I'll ask when I got a presentation I do on essentials of coaching, and I'll say, why don't we, nobody will disagree that it's a good idea. Everybody knows we should coach people, lead
Invest
people,
more.
develop people. And I say, why don't we do a better job? Well, I'll always don't have time, easier to do it myself. I've tried to teach them before. But at some point, they're going to say out loud, I just don't know. I know how to do what I do. I don't know how to teach somebody how to do what I do. And I think that's a big challenge, is that we don't know how to impart that knowledge to somebody else in a way that they can pick it up and carry it with them.
Interesting. And one of my questions was actually, I think you kind of alluded to it because we talked about the idea that tools can help run the business, but leaders still have to navigate the ship, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. From the perspective what responsibilities can never be handed off if a business owner wants long-term success, like certain things. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's it. I mean, we can tell people, hey, go find your own personal development stuff, and they will. And the ones who do it best are going to leave you and go somewhere else. The ones who do it the worst, you'll never get rid of because nobody else will hire them. And the rest are going to remain average. And so I think we've got to look and say, that ability, that gut instinct, as opposed to empirical data that's going to come through I think we can't pass that off. I think there's still got to be some level of human navigating, I guess I would say, because again, the personality. I mean, let's look at last week. We talked about it, and some people are going to be watching this interview 2 or 3 years from now, but the people who see it live, we talked about how many people were in snow and ice the last couple of weeks. Well, that doesn't just make it difficult for me to get to work. Now I had to find something to do with my kids because school was out this week, and my pet had to go somewhere because they can't stay outside. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that
Adds
equation.
more complexity to think about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and those things are not at the forefront. It's layers of the onion.
It's
But I got to
reactive.
be willing to peel those layers back and go, what is causing Randy to underperform today or this week? Well, there's a lot on my brain, that's going on. Let's throw one other variable in the equation to make it even worse. And I've also got to realize when somebody's just giving me an excuse. So at
Mm,
times, I've gotta be empathetic and bend with you, and at other times, I've gotta say, "Hey, we still have a job to do. Sorry about you. Get back to work." Because if you know that's a person who tends to produce excuses instead of results, they're always gonna have a story of why they can't do it. I've
yeah.
gotta be able to discern between those 2, and that comes with me reading your eyes and knowing your personality and seeing your track record and your history and all that stuff. On paper, it would tell me to do this, but I can't always do what's on paper because sometimes it's gotta be what's in the air between the 2 of us.
And that requires you to be in person, always helps when you're in person, and you gotta have a specific skill to be able to read that over
Yep,
video chat, right? Yeah.
right, exactly.
Can we talk about AI? You made a comment about AI, right? And how AI is cannot replace people. I see we live in such an automated world right now that everybody is finding those two-letter word so appealing. What do you see AI can be the asset? Where do you see AI can be potentially a liability for owners?
It's funny that you asked that. I read a statement yesterday that said 3 years ago, it was like 2 different quotes. 3 years ago, "If you don't have AI, your company's gonna crash and burn." Today, "If your company uses too much AI, you're gonna crash and burn." Because I think we've begun to realize it cannot be the end all. And
Again,
so I have already found it helping me. Like, I don't feel like I'm a great writer. I think I'm a good communicator verbally, but I don't think I'm a great writer. Part of it is because I can pencil whip something to death and I just get lost in the minutia of it. AI has helped me to write some summaries. AI has helped me to reword some things. AI can help me find statistics and data very quickly and readily. And the better I don't know what the right word to use here is, the better I train AI, the better it produces information for me. You and I had a conversation about don't use my account because I'm trying to train this for
yeah,
me.
yeah, it personalizes. It understands the pattern of thinking, and it's gonna spit out the information back to the way you would write it eventually when
And
it
that's
takes
the
time.
only way we can make it even remotely sound genuinely like us because I'll read some things that it kicks out and I'm like, that's just not me. I mean, anybody who's watching this can hear my Texas accent, not just in my voice, but in my words. And so we've got to be careful that it doesn't become a liability that people feel like we're using it as a crutch as opposed to a tool. And, I think if we use it as a tool wisely, to replace some of the really, really administrivia, again, like I said a minute ago, minutia type stuff, and let the people do what only the people I can't say could do, people should do. Again, the connecting with your customers. You and I had a conversation about I've gotten, and since we talked about this, I have gotten at least 10 more
Wow,
emails
wow.
that have the same last sentence in them, and so I could tell they're using AI. And, since you and I talked a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I've gotten at least 10 more of those. And so I think to me, that becomes an immediate push it aside. This
Push
is
aside.
just auto generated. This is not somebody who wants to connect with me. This is somebody who's just trying to add to their connections.
How
They're
much
not they're just trying to grow their universe.
Yeah, as you work with a lot of leaders, right, and entrepreneurs and C-level executives, how much personal relationship, personal touch becomes a necessity as you work with individuals that are high on a higher level than just on frontline individual
Yeah, so
producers?
I don't spend time with major corporation C-level people. Let me start by saying that. A lot of the people I work with, the owner is in the front of the building, a few hundred, maybe at most a few thousand employees. So it's a little bit easier for them than it would be in in a true corporate setting. Again, I think some of that AI has become the allowable excuse.
Hmm.
I don't think they were always great at connecting anyway. I think they tended to go down the hall to the big office and kind of forgot what it was like to poke their head out and see what life looks like in the real world for the rest of their employees. And, back it was early in my career, I guess it was in the early to mid 90s, the term management by walking around got really big. Get out of your office and go out and see what's going on and all that. And I think that's still a great strategy. I don't hear that term as much anymore. That connectivity, can you still go out and connect with one of your people? If they're going through a major life crisis, do you know about their dad's cancer? Do you know about their little kid? I was at Sunday school on Sunday and heard about a kid who's not quite 2 that has an aggressive form of brain cancer. Man, that dad still has to go to work every day. That mom still has to go to work every day, but that is a very, very real distraction. And if I don't know that's going on in their life and I'm just beating them more, hey, row the boat harder, and I don't realize what they're going through, they're not gonna they're not gonna stick with me very long. I give you one
Absolutely.
more statistic on this deal. This is from another study, bit.ai is one that did this study. 37% of respondents said that they stay with the company they're with, they stay with the organization they're with because of the people they work with. Not because of the work they do, not because of how
37%.
much they get paid, not by anything like that. It's because of a third of the people, it's because of who they work with. Well, I can tell you, I can't take it forever if my statement is, I love my teammates, I just hate my boss. I love my teammates, but my boss just never connects with us. So if that's the case, we're going to lose those people, that third of the people. And you got to figure that third of the people, some of those are highly desirable employees to have, high performers, technically sound, great number of, they've got
Yeah.
a great network of people that they're connected to, whatever the case may be there.
Yeah. You literally answered my question. My question was, the quiet quitting. Yeah. Like what from your experience, what actually causes people to check out? And you just mentioned one major one is it's
Yeah.
people
Disconnect.
start working. Yeah. It's your manager, right? Direct manager, because he has the most influence on you.
Yeah, and it's funny, and I've had this conversation, 150 times in the last couple of years. This term "quiet quitting" came out in about 21 or 22. Everybody after COVID, and everybody started throwing this out, and I'm like, quiet quitting is not new. Disengagement and active disengagement has been tracked by Gallup for decades. They just called it quiet quitting because it came a new little buzzword, and everybody got brave and put it out on Facebook. Well, you're not quietly quitting if you're putting that on
No,
Facebook or
it's out
Instagram
there,
or
right?
whatever. You're screaming that you're quitting. But I think because in 20, especially 21, 22, on into 23, when the job market became a buyer's market, in other words, the person applying had all the leverage, I could shout that stuff from the mountaintop. Well, now I'm beginning to see last year and especially so far this year, we're swinging back to it's a seller's market. And so the employer has more of the leverage. And so you better be careful what you put out there for the world to see that say, hey, I'm sitting at my desk, but I'm not doing my work. I'm watching video games or Netflix or whatever. I'm going to remember that because that is a whole lot more a reflection of your character than it is a reflection of your culture or your environment or your current circumstances.
What what should be the if you are coaching managers and entrepreneurs, what they should focus on, where they start to develop that amazing culture?
Yeah, I think one is make decisions and set up your culture around your organizational values. It can't be around the person who yells the loudest or cries the most. Okay, that's number one. But I think if we do help people see a path forward in their career, and here's the scary part for a lot of people, that may not mean they retire at our company. That may mean they grow and they grow beyond us. If I'm doing the right thing for people, I should help them grow, even if they're not going to be with me forever, because I'm not looking at them as a cog in the wheel. I'm looking at them as a person. I think if we will help them to develop goals for what they want to be, not just what they want to do, I think if we will help them develop, again, close that gap between their current capability and their capacity. I think it's hard to grow somebody's capacity. I think we've all got, I'm not ever going to be mechanically minded. That's just not the way my brain works. I may become a better reader, but no one is ever going to look at me and say he's an exceptional reader because I don't retain well. So there are some things that you're going to hit a ceiling. But if I help them define what that strategy is, understand how they can develop themselves to that and work with them to actually make that a reality, the crazy part is studies show that creates greater loyalty.
That's right. That was my question about how much that will make them to stay more and contribute more to the company. And I always ask myself, how do companies like Amazon and Google get to such a large levels, right? That there's gotta be a season in life, in their growth life, where they had that type of environment where we want to invest in our people, no matter what level they are. We want to help them to, like you said, help them to reach their capacity level versus where they are today, and just leverage that and maximize that out of them. There's got to be that growth That culture has to be instilled in those companies. That's why they got to that levels. And
Right.
obviously something changed where they just became extremely corporatized, right? And I
Well, and it's, it's a little bit like dieting or exercise. You can't try it for a week and not see any results and give up on it. You gotta
yeah,
stay
yeah, yeah.
after it, stay after it, stay
Right.
after it, stay after it. And, I mean, I've been in places before where they've got concrete floors in a building and they've got scooters for people to drive around. And they've got a foosball table or a ping pong table in the break area. And my son worked at Yelp for a while, right during COVID, actually. So he got there in January of 20. They had a coffee bar all day, anytime, free, barista there all the time. They had happy hour at 5 o'clock with beer and wine. They had all kinds of stuff to create community. Interesting thing is that this generation that wants community the most is also the one that has been pressing for this virtual world to work at home. And so we're distancing ourselves. And then they came back from COVID and they would make come to the conference room optional for the meeting so I can zoom in from down the hall in my cubicle. There's just something about the energy of us being together in a room. And I think that's a part of it. And I know I'm the old guy. I know there's a lot of people on here watching, well, look at all the gray hair. And I'm just from the time it started, I told all my people, I don't think there's any way people are going to be able to build a long term culture where people are loyal to it virtually. I think we're going to have to come back in person. And now we're beginning to see a greater divide between those who believe that and those who don't. I mean, I saw it on 60 Minutes in probably 21 or 22, and it was two CEOs, one who had sold all their real estate in New York because they were like, we're never coming back, and one who believed we have to come back. And just the way that they were setting up their culture, and more power to them. If both of them can be successful, I think it's great. For me, I think there is a reason why uh, solitary isolation, solitary confinement is deemed cruel and unusual punishment on the world, like Geneva Convention and all that stuff. You can't put people in prison in solitary confinement for forever because we're not wired to be that way. We're wired to connect.
Yes. Connect in person. I always like to close my podcast if somebody who's listening to this is a business owner or is a leader in the corporate world. What is that one advice that you will give them that just absolutely they just can't just bypass?
I would say pick three people. Pick a high performer, somebody with high potential, and somebody who is at high risk. Whether they're going to leave us or if they don't improve, we're going to leave them. And set about creating a personal development plan for them and see if by the end of the year it doesn't make a huge difference for all three of them. So it's the same advice, but it's for three different targets to help those people become even better than they are or to save them from the brink of we can't go this direction anymore.
What do you think leaders you've seen that implemented that end up finding out?
Well, a lot of times the underperformer, the high risk person is not as bad as we thought. They were just being too much ignored and we weren't helping them patch holes. I think also that high potential person, we find that they can do sooner than we thought. It's amazing what age they're showing kids math and stuff in science where, when I was in school, it was like senior in high school and now they're doing it in fourth grade because we realize our brain, our capacity is better. But here's the big thing, that high performer who thought nobody noticed, I'm tired of everything getting dumped on my back. I'm tired of having to pull the weight for the underperformers. All of a sudden they feel valued and appreciated and they do even more and they have a better attitude.
And better results.
Yep.
Yeah, extraordinary results. That's ultimately what every company was.
A term I would use a lot is elite.
Elite.
They become elite.
Yeah. Thank you, Randy. That's been
You're
absolutely
so
great.
welcome. Thanks for
Appreciate you.
having me.
Likewise. Thank you.